Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is December 29th, 2025. Welcome to the podcast. As a quick reminder, next week I'm going to go live with the segments. I am so excited to do that. I know I've been saying that I'm going to go probably around 9 a.m. is when I'll do them, between 9 and 10, but I'll let you know when I do the first one and where it's at and all that stuff. Next year also is an election year with the midterms. I'm very excited about that. Also in Illinois, we got a governor's race coming up, and I'm going to start a segment where I say, hey, if I were running for governor, here is what I would do. So I'm excited for those types of things to happen. And as usual, if you like the podcast, tell other people. I'm going to start doing more advertising next year. I moved this year. Well, we moved this year, so I was busy doing that. So a couple of things I couldn't do yet. But 2026, I'm so excited. So for the end of the year, what I wanted to do is a podcast where I use the information that I've learned and I do an analysis of how I think the year is gone. So, what I want to talk about today is the U.S. federal government policy on the Trump administration versus Congress, business, and the mainstream media. The first one I want to start with is the mainstream media. So, what I'm specifically talking about is we can influence each other with labels, and people had a tendency this year to blame social media. So, what I'm talking about is the mainstream media all this year has used labels to describe people that I thought was a little bit misleading to the American public. Here is an example. When we talk about immigration, who are we actually talking about? Are we talking about people who were legally in the country and who have been legally here the whole time? So when you get the soundbite from them and they put a label on it, then it became migrants, illegal migrants, or migrants that were here just working and all that stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is with the mainstream media, they need to be careful that they are giving you the specific characterization, and the specific characterization would be people who are in the country illegally, because that's what the Trump administration was actually focused on. They weren't focused on people who were here legally. Now, when we get into the weeds on this for a second, there were several instances where they were people here who, one example is, came here legally and then they let their paperwork expire. So when ICE went looking for people, and they looked for people who came here to work and then they just stayed. That was 5 or 6 instances of people doing that. So the mainstream media made it look like that these people were here legally and they were just being harassed. That's a fact. And you can go back and check me on that one. The other thing was people were here from like 20 years ago. They had gotten married and now they were still in the database. See, there is a database that ICE uses to find people, and the mainstream media didn't explain why they were looking for these people. That's why. You're here illegally if you're here working and you don't update your paperwork, or you're trying to migrate here, and every 10 years, if you are here legally, you have to recertify, and there's a fee. Well, people don't want to pay that $1,000, so they ignore it. Okay, now let's look at social media. Social media and the Trump administration, they've actually been trying to push back by suing different social media groups and etc. Because in this country, at least, the narrative is controlled by whoever talks the longest and keeps information coming out very rapidly to influence people, because people seem to be prompted by the soundbite. Because if you look at any media strips, it's the soundbite, because for whatever reason people don't want to listen to more. Now, the next one is, don't blame the firearms. Why is this important? Haven't talked much about firearms this year because there was no need to, because the media hasn't talked about it either. Now, I can tell you in Illinois, there's been some changes, just more control over people who are buying the weapons legally. See, they only talk about firearms when a Democrat is in the White House, because that's when they start trying to go after gun manufacturers or people who own guns. So you probably didn't know this, but back in when George W. Bush was president, he put out, I think it was an executive order that basically said that the cities could not sue firearms dealers, because they were trying to sue them based on the firearms being made by Colt or whoever. And I did a segment about it about a year and a half ago. Most of the illegal guns are guns that people are making. They're not guns that people are using for crimes normally. Now, the mass shootings are different. But anyway, the firearms has not been an issue. Now, the people violence has been. This has been another record year of some of these same cities where people are committing shootings, mass shootings. I mean, think about it. There was a mass shooting in Rhode Island, and they say shooting. The mainstream media does, but actually it's more people violence. People are violent. Look in California. And honestly, most of the time, when they report this, especially like in the St. Louis market, they won't even tell you what the people look like. Why? Because they don't want you to know that it's the same group doing it. When is the last time that Asians have been on TV for trying to kill each other or robbing somebody or something like that? So we have to look at the facts and data and pretty much come forward and say, hey, this group is doing it. Influencers, influencers, influencers. This year, there were several times, and I come back to immigration, where some of the influencers, and we're talking about people who have 45 million subscribers or 50 million subscribers. Wow. If I could get 500,000, I would be happy, right? And that's one of my goals. But anyway, there has been missed opportunities for influencers to speak up at certain times and defend things that I think are right. Now, I'm not going to go into any specifics. Influencers, in my opinion, are some of the most powerful people in the country. Because if you go back 1 or 2 years, they would comment on things. But yet, when it's law and order things, they have been totally silent. And I honestly think that that's one of their jobs as an influencers, to at least be fair and say, hey, yeah, that guy is right. We should be doing this. So you decide that. Now, I want to talk about California. And this ties in with a lot of things. As you've noticed, since January 20th, when people say that there are national disasters in their state, California started with fires. They have them every year. That has not changed. And then they have floods. Over the years, the federal government has given them money. So the mudslides on these slopes and all that stuff, they could have fixed that. They haven't fixed it. That's how come it keeps happening. The fires this year, there were fires in California because people were setting them. The mainstream media downplayed that part. They were more focused on the federal government not giving them a lot of money. Well, why didn't the federal government not do that? The federal government doesn't do that. And what I learned this year specifically is when the states get money, it's up to the legislature and the governor to allocate the money for what it should be used for. And there is a bigger problem. In Illinois, for example, they just started fixing the roads in my area probably 6 months ago. Why are they fixing it? Well, the governor's running for re-election and he started coming back down here again. He has personally, and that legislature, have had the money probably for 3 years. And it's up to the legislature and the governor to allocate funds. So getting back to California, it's the same deal. In some of these states, they don't have to allocate the money, and then the state, the federal government doesn't get their money back. That's why now the president is like, hey, I'm not going to give you the money if you're not going to use it for the intended purpose. And the intended purpose is to take some of that money and to fix the disaster area, because cities can do that. No city in California should have mudslides. They know that it's coming, and it's up to those local governments to allocate the money and get it fixed. Now, last one I want to talk about is the shutdown in air traffic controllers. As you will know, and I talked about this, I said, why is it that people who don't get paid are air traffic controllers, and also there's people checking IDs when people come through the airport? Why is that? Okay, so I was in the government 30 years, probably a little more. They can allocate money. Did you know, and I'm probably repeating this for some of you, did you know that there are entities in the federal government, if they have a shutdown, they still get paid? Why? Because they're critical. Air traffic controlling would be critical. People checking ID cards so people can get on planes would be. But like I told you back then, just to remind you, Congress doesn't want to do that. Neither side does, because when there's a government shutdown, they want real people to be affected, and Congress doesn't care because they still get paid regardless. And air traffic controllers specifically, they control the airways, and you would think that they would be mission critical. Now, they are accepted service, so that means that after the shutdown is over, they get paid all the money. So there was an air traffic controller on there specifically. They gave the American people the impression he wasn't sure even if he was going to get the retroactive pay. See, and Congress does that specifically. When people are furloughed, when they come back, they normally get all of the retroactive pay. And also with this air traffic controller, he acted like if he missed two paychecks, that he was going to be homeless. Now, I've been in the government, and as you know, from my generation, I'm 61, we were always taught to plan. Being out of furloughed in the government, actually, it happens every couple of years. And he looked like that he was a seasoned veteran. So why is he telling America that he doesn't have any money to send his daughter to college? That gives you the wrong impression, or that people in the federal government, well, first of all, we don't plan. Secondly, we're living paycheck to paycheck. Those types of things can be anyone in America, but I'm telling you that in his type of work, when he's getting paid, he's making a lot of money, and that no one is living paycheck to paycheck, because these people are paid a lot of money. They're paid at least $130,000 a year at the low end of it. So to summarize everything, sorry, I went kind of long on this. The country is getting better. And also, when you are making changes to the country, no matter who's doing it, people aren't going to like it. And only the faces have changed. There needs to be more optimism of what we're doing. Secondly, find out more information. When someone says something on the mainstream media, it'll take you 5 seconds to go and look it up, or you can just listen to my podcast, because as you know, that's why I do facts and data. I am very excited for next year. It's going to be fun. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Let me know what you think.